A dark turn ahead. Will Sophia and Aaron's desperation lead to a shocking kidnapping on Days of Our Lives? Welcome back to NBC News Channel. In the coming episodes, insiders suggest that Sophia Choi and Aaron Green might orchestrate an absolutely stunning escape plan from Bayview Psychiatric Facility, and their intentions appear far darker than anyone could have anticipated. The pieces are aligning in a way that could lead to one of the most dramatic confrontations Salem has witnessed in years, and the stakes for little Trey have never been higher. A chance encounter with unexpected consequences. The unfolding narrative begins with an emotionally charged moment when Aaron Green, portrayed by the talented Louis Tomeo, finds himself crossing paths with Chanel Dupree-Demera, brought to life by the captivating Raven Bowens. The significance of this chance meeting cannot be overstated, particularly given the complicated history these two characters share. In the past, Chanel exhibited a seemingly gentler side of her personality when circumstances required Aaron's participation in legal proceedings, specifically when she needed him to formally relinquish all parental claims through the paternity waiver. The dynamics between these two individuals have shifted considerably now that Chanel is the legal guardian and full-time caregiver for their shared biological child, Trey Demera. This seemingly ordinary encounter could transform into something far more consequential, as Chanel may happen to be strolling through Salem with the infant in tow when she unexpectedly comes face-to-face with Aaron. Such a meeting presents a bittersweet opportunity for Aaron to catch a fleeting glimpse of the child he once believed he might raise alongside his biological mother. The interaction, though potentially brief, carries substantial emotional weight for Aaron, who must confront both the joy of seeing his son and the profound pain of acknowledging his own choice to step away from fatherhood. The weight of a painful decision. For Aaron, witnessing little Trey portrayed alternately by child actors Joseph Illenfeld and Jordan Perdura presents far more than a simple visual confirmation that the child exists and is thriving. The encounter serves as a stark, unavoidable reminder of the significant sacrifice Aaron made when he signed away his parental rights. While Aaron consciously recognizes that his decision was ultimately the correct one given the circumstances surrounding Sophia's mental health crisis and imprisonment at Bayview, the emotional toll of this choice remains undeniable and quite profound. The complexity of Aaron's feelings during such an encounter reflects the genuine struggle many people face when making life-altering decisions that affect not only themselves, but also innocent lives. Aaron understands intellectually that by surrendering his paternity claims, he enabled Trey to be placed in what appeared to be a stable, secure household where the child could grow up without the chaos that might have surrounded his birth parents. However, understanding the rightness of a decision intellectually does not erase the deep-seated pain that accompanies such a profound sacrifice. There exists an undeniable tension between Aaron's rational understanding of his circumstances and his raw emotional response to seeing his biological son being raised by another family. Signs of emotional awakening behind clinical withdrawal. The narrative intensifies dramatically when we examine Sophia's current psychological state at Bayview Psychiatric Facility. According to the November 21st episode of Days of Our Lives, both Aaron and Ariana Ari Horton, beautifully portrayed by Marissa Reyes, made an emotional pilgrimage to visit Sophia in her place of confinement. During this visitation, Aaron found himself in an overwhelmingly heartbroken condition. He attempted to communicate with the young woman he loved and who had been institutionalized following her traumatic breakdown. Aaron took it upon himself to provide reassurance to an apparently unresponsive Sophia, explaining that their biological child would be positioned within a caring household and would have access to every opportunity for a prosperous and fulfilling existence. He spoke these words with the hope that they might penetrate the emotional fortress Sophia had constructed around herself since her institutionalization. However, as Aaron delivered these carefully chosen words meant to comfort, Sophia maintained an absolutely blank, forward-staring expression, offering no visible indication that his message had reached her consciousness. She appeared completely withdrawn and utterly disconnected from the emotional reality of the conversation taking place before her. Yet beneath this clinical presentation of catatonia, there existed subtle indicators that Sophia's withdrawal might not be entirely genuine or permanent. Observers noted that when Aaron and Ari eventually departed from Sophia's quarters following their unsuccessful attempt at connection, her expression appeared to soften almost imperceptibly, as though their presence had somehow penetrated her carefully constructed emotional defenses and triggered a delayed reaction. This crucial detail suggests that Sophia may not be as profoundly detached as she appears to be, and that her current withdrawn state might represent a deliberate psychological defense mechanism rather than a complete loss of consciousness or awareness. A critical information gap with potentially devastating consequences. The plot thickens considerably when we examine what Aaron deliberately omitted from his reassuring speech to Sophia. In his attempts to comfort the hospitalized mother, Aaron failed to disclose one absolutely critical detail about their child's placement specifically. That little Trey has been placed directly into the foster care custody of Johnny DeMera and Chanel Dupree DeMera, who are not only serving as guardians, but are actively engaged in the daily responsibilities of parenting the infant. This monumental oversight in Aaron's communication becomes even more significant when we consider the history between Sophia and Chanel. Ariana attempted to mitigate Aaron's concerns about Sophia's apparent unresponsiveness by reminding him of something he seemed to have forgotten during the emotional trauma of recent events. She pointed out that, before Sophia experienced her complete emotional and mental breakdown that precipitated her institutionalization, the young mother had explicitly expressed her desire and preference that Chanel and Johnny would serve as the primary caregivers and guardians for her biological son, little Trey. Ari reinforced this point by noting that the current arrangement with Johnny and Chanel serving as Trey's foster parents actually aligns perfectly with what Sophia had previously desired and requested during a moment of relative clarity, given that the current reality perfectly mirrors Sophia's own stated preferences. Ariana reasoned that receiving confirmation of this information might actually bring peace and comfort to an extremely troubled and incarcerated young woman. The logic seemed sound. If Sophia wanted this outcome, and the outcome has been achieved, surely she would experience relief and perhaps even gratitude. However, this optimistic prediction stands on the precipice of being dramatically proven wrong by the unfolding narrative. A prediction about to crumble into ruin. Days of Our Lives spoilers circulating through the entertainment community suggest that Ariana's hopeful predictions about Sophia's response to this information may be extraordinarily and tragically incorrect. The revelation that her biological child is being raised by the very woman Chanel against whom Sophia harbors deep and potentially escalating resentment could serve as the precise psychological trigger needed to violently jolt Sophia out of her catatonic state and back into a confrontational reality. This critical piece of information, when finally delivered to Sophia during her confinement at Bayview, could produce an absolutely devastating impact on her fragile mental state. Rather than bringing the peace and acceptance that Ariana predicted, the knowledge might instead crystallize into something far more dangerous and unpredictable. The realization that her child is being raised by Chanel could snap Sophia back to wakefulness and awareness in the most catastrophic way imaginable, potentially transforming her from a withdrawn, unresponsive patient into a woman consumed by a singular, all-consuming mission. We can absolutely envision the scenario that unfolds when Sophia receives this crucial confirmation, a sudden, dramatic awakening as if from a deep slumber, followed almost immediately by an iron determination and an internal vow that she will reclaim her biological child by any means necessary. The psychiatric institution that was meant to be a place of healing could instead become the staging ground for a desperate planone born of maternal desperation, deep-seated distrust of Chanel, and perhaps even collaboration with an increasingly devoted father figure. A mother's absolute rejection of her own prior wishes. The narrative becomes progressively darker when we consider Sophia's psychological relationship with Chanel and Johnny as parental figures. Although Sophia had previously expressed a preference for these individuals to raise her child, the passage of time and her current institutionalization may have fundamentally transformed her perspective and emotional orientation toward this arrangement. Sophia may experience an absolute reversal in her thinking, concluding that allowing Chanel to maintain custody and parental authority over little Trey represents an utterly unacceptable and intolerable situation that demands immediate corrective action. Her conviction that Chanel and Johnny are wholly unsuitable guardians could become so absolute and so consuming that Sophia might conclude the only appropriate course of action is to forcibly reclaim her child from their care. This determination could escalate beyond mere wishes or preferences into a fully formed plana scheme that might involve escape from Bayview, careful coordination with outside allies possibly including the ever-devoted Aaron, and ultimately a dramatic kidnapping that would shock the entire Salem community. A critical vulnerability emerges. Adding another layer of complexity to this emerging crisis is the observation that Johnny and Chanel have been visibly struggling to adjust to their unexpected new roles as full-time parents to an infant. The demands of caring for a young child, combined with their existing personal struggles and relationship difficulties, have left both of them depleted, overwhelmed, and increasingly exhausted. This deteriorating mental and emotional condition could render them vulnerable to the kind of carefully orchestrated plan that Sophia and Aaron might be constructing. If Sophia were able to exit Bayview and observe the situation firsthand, she might recognize and strategically exploit the fatigue and desperation evident in Johnny and Chanel's demeanor. The couple's obvious struggles with their new parental responsibilities could create opportunities for a kidnapping plot to succeed where it might otherwise fail. A vigilant, focused, and emotionally driven mother acting in concert with a devoted former partner might identify the precise moments when Johnny and Chanel's guard would be lowest and their attention most divided. A woman capable of darkness. Throughout her time on Days of Our Lives, Sophia has demonstrated repeatedly and convincingly that she possesses the psychological capacity and the demonstrated willingness to devise and execute schemes of considerable complexity and moral ambiguity. Her history on the show includes manipulations, deceptions, and increasingly desperate actions that suggest she is fully capable of orchestrating something as dramatic and consequential as a kidnapping plot. The Sophia confined to Bayview is not a meek, passive individual who would accept her circumstances and her separation from her child without resistance. Rather, she represents a young woman whose desperation, combined with her demonstrated capacity for planning and deception, creates a genuinely dangerous combination. If she were to exit the psychiatric facility and determine that Chanel and Johnny represent an unacceptable threat to her child's well-being, there remains little doubt that she would pursue reclamation of that child through whatever means became available to her. Aaron's continued devotion and emotional investment in both Sophia and their biological child could provide the external support system necessary to transform desperate thoughts into concrete action. The emerging prophecy. The more intensely that Ariana emphasizes and predicts that Sophia will eventually achieve peace and acceptance by allowing Chanel and Johnny to raise Trey indefinitely, the more the narrative trajectory suggests that Sophia will instead veer in precisely the opposite direction. Her psychological response to the realization of her child's placement may trigger not resignation and acceptance, but rather rebellion and desperate action. The signs point toward an escalating crisis, a planned escape, and a shocking revelation that will shake Salem to its core. Days of Our Lives has masterfully constructed the pieces of this intricate puzzle, and all evidence suggests that the coming episodes will deliver an absolutely stunning confrontation between maternal determination, romantic devotion, parental concern, and the institutional structures that have been designed to contain and treat these desperately troubled individuals. The question is no longer whether something dramatic will happen, but rather when, and what consequences will follow in its wake. The stage has been set for what could become one of the most memorable storylines in recent Days of Our Lives history. Stay tuned for what promises to be absolutely shocking television.